Francesca.
Hello.
Hello.
Very soft.
Good evening.
Closing to spring.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this evening's keynote, the third in the Berlage's Spring 2021 series. It's wonderful to have Francesca Torzo from the home of her euphemist studio in Genova this evening, which she founded in 2008 after having worked in the Swiss offices of Peter Zumthor and Bosshard Vaquer. Over the course of her studies, Francesca studied architecture at the TU Delft, at the ETSAB in Barcelona, at the AM in Mendrisio, and the OOZE in Venice. She holds 2 visiting professorships at the moment, one at the Bergen School of Architecture in Norway, which is, well, quite familiar to our recently graduated thesis cohort, who one of their sites in Norway happened to be Bergen. So we have gotten to know the city quite intimately over the past 6 months. And she also is a visiting professor at the Accademia di Architettura di Mendrisio. In 2019, she completed the Z33 House for Contemporary Art in Hasselt, Belgium. And this is, well, one of, I think, the projects that has really put the practice on the map, especially within the Low Countries. Here it has had a certain sort of significance within especially the younger student population. So I'm sure everybody's very eager to hear more about your work this evening. So I give you the screen, Francesca, so to be our storyteller for this evening. Thank you very much.
Salomon, thank you very much for the introduction. And there is a kind of tenderness because I was somehow a co-pen of yours time ago in Delft. And I remember the channels, I remember the beautiful library by Bakema that then suffered a fire. So there are sweet memories. And when I'm going to share the screen, and when we spoke with Salomon and Ludo, I expressed also a little feeling under pressure for the attention on Z33. And so I made a wish to have a walk through one building as a Sherazade. And I begin. I ask you kindly confirmation if you see good.
It's perfect.
Good. It is Sherazade storytelling, take 5 tales, because somehow that is how our mind works. We swing between distraction and concentration all the time, and in a mysterious yet very precise way, we recombine not merely informations or data collected by the senses, but we combine allusions of other cultural experiments and experiences. Therefore, it seems to me what I observe that men are paradoxical and fascinating beings that live of chaos and order, that we could borrow the word from Finnegan's Wake, cosmos. And in that way, there is this inexplicable correspondence between a collective understanding of places, we could say words and colors, as well as an individual recognition of themselves. And this is beyond form, beyond language, neither material. So we say tent, or textile, and we have associations. I would like to emancipate from the risk of a too subjective or intimate storytelling, because I find that would be embarrassing and too anecdotic. I would like to always recall wider background, which is a cultural background along millennia, where societies, as the result of the meeting of individuals, have made experiments of political agreements, economical agreements, social agreements, and they have represented it. They have represented the festivity of a cultural moment of an epoch. They have as well represented power. And this representation very often was an alternation of languages, and very often beginnings and endings were coexisting, as beautifully reveals Johan Huizinga, historian from Holland, explaining the waning of the Middle Ages. So a quest for you, young architects, is how can we be modern, investing of more meaning, modernity than contemporaneity. And the hypothesis I would like to share through these 5 tales is that tradition and modernity are maybe the two sides of one coin. One corresponds to the other. Art lies halfway between scientific knowledge and mythical or magical thought. It is an antropologo in Italian. I'm sorry for my mismatch in English. Claude Lévi-Strauss, who was not approaching culture or anthropology under this perspective of an enfant prodige, but with an open mind, almost scientific attitude, trying to find relations among paradoxical human behaviors or cultural acts. And there, this mythical thought is simply another kind of intelligence. And he speaks about the bricoleur, l'ingénieur. I appreciate highly this proposition, as culture cannot be reduced to a positivistic process where you give yourself a discipline and you can, with a superficial or malicious optimism, believe it's always going to proceed and improve towards something better. It is a phenomena in movement, contradictory movement, where differences coexist. And in that we are the alive acting actors with responsibilities. And what do we have? Our mind and our body and reality. San Marco floor. It is a tale of ground. It starts with topography, and topography is like the beginning, our ground, which represents, well, it results from clashes of earth plates. Therefore, we have the world as we know, that is with very, very slow transformation and still is moving. There we have settled. Man started walking, not only walking, they settled and they started building cities. And most of the time, still today, we can recognize in cities the economy of settling on a ground, meaning people were intelligent and were trying to achieve the maximum result with minimum effort. This economy is visible still today in cities, as we have not only fragments, we have spatial situations, places that inherit acts from the past that have been confirmed and not demolished, not cancelled, and have been built up on. How do places survive with meaning? How does that happen? Is it about form? Is it about language? Is it about a cultural manifesto? I believe it's more complex, and I have not yet clear how it works. Vitruvio was saying, and we are now 15 before Christ. How a long time ago. Before starting to build the walls of a city, you will have to choose a place of excellent air. And today, in a time where indeed our plots are defined by administration and notaries and lawyers, because there is, since quite some long centuries, private property and public estate, still our cities in Europe, but also for what I know in China, that I know a little bit more than other continents, because it's almost a continent, China, still express this Vitruvio phrase. They still preserve and show in the meandering of buildings which have a middle-age structure. This is Hasselt in Provincia Limburg. They show the soft land and how citizens have been building, consolidating soft and slippery land. How the plots were long, how they were gaining some key places which were a public space, even the case of the Begainov, which was a sort of a city within the city. We are here in the 18th century. We started making a survey of each stone, literally each stone of the Beguinage. And we did that to collect knowledge and an understanding. And if you look carefully, maybe you can see what we have been learning, taking measurements of the context, the metaphysical one, that there are territories traced on the ground through stone. And it's not about romanticism for the vernacular. It is that people have built, have paved grounds to define the places, not only spaces, places, and therefore define ingredients of representation of a cultural identity, or to define coexistences of private and public, or to represent the festivity of the church, for example, in this case. We started the drawing even before having a plan of a building, even if there was a vision of the building, fragments of places. These were streets, there were courts, there were patios with openings overlooking on them. There were also slightly folding pavings to remember the flow of river. Is there something special reminding a river? Simply we thought that it matters if citizens for centuries have not erased a movement of the street. It should be reminded, kept in memory. As in memory, we believe there's vision too. We started drawing the street, a street which was not only a paving, it was a theatrical scenography with artificial lighting, with natural lighting, or represented synchronically with the spaces of the House for Art, which were also of the city, and the public passage or maybe private passage with benches and trees. The ground itself offers places that offer this coexistence of the without and the within. Isn't it a double face situation, a coexistence of the city and the most intimate place, where even a tree may be part of the theater. And the ground also expresses all that we don't notice. We always draw the ground as flat because that's like the trick of law of gravity. We always feel like standing on flat ground, but all our cities have significant inclinations. So in this building, you rise up almost 1 meter, unlike the street. Same movement, sloping inside or stepping. And it slopes also in the courtyard where it collects the water to water the tree, which is filling completely the patio. And the paving is broken stone because everybody can belong and relate to it. It is unnoticed, conventional or familiar, maybe both. There is also a part which is a new realm of cut stone. And cut stone homages something existing, which is a tradition of the Blaue Steen of Limburg. It creates new drawings for a new space, which may be a playground for the house for art or for the young people or elderly visiting the garden. It is the ground, then stepping in steps, drawn, a tool, an instrument to define new places, to grow with new places in existing context, as well as it was for us a space that would allow us to relate a new building to an existing context. We are interested in gradients and in coexistence of differences. A tale of passage. Passage lives in our memory. Each of you may have visited through watching films, walking through Nadar photographs or through the words of Benjamin. But anyhow, there is a theatrical essence within. There is also depth and ambiguity. Who is looking who, what is looking what, and there is a theme of rhythm. Rhythm holds both repetition and constance. It relates to music. There is also that we associate to passage this wonder and real experience, even if maybe we did never walk through one, of the being in an exterior which is the most artificial interior. And that is created through a combination of elements. Again, the celebration of a rhythm, which announces the scale perception of places and at the same time offers islands of quiet, calmness. So there is a concatenation of instants chained one with the other and the still of a moment. Each rhythm, said Aristotle, because it was a school. I mean, it took almost 300 years to reach this written expression. Of course, it was oral tradition, then going from man or to woman, some when, who knows. Each rhythm is measured with a defined movement. what does it mean? Is it, am I talking about a rule of movement? Not really, it's more like dance. So isn't our perception of the urbanity of passage, which are these great interior plays, stage as an exterior, about wise, rich and multifaceted rhythm, where you dispose plurality of movements. Is movement only of your body? It goes also with the view. And within these passage, the enfilade comes to our awareness, and we see that it belongs to many places, to interior spaces. We are here now in the offices of Saturday 3, but it's very similar to the chained thresholds, building an enfilade of the ruins church, of the church ruins and the thresholds of the orchards. So it is the construction, a spatial construction, which creates a assonance of memories. And there is where I would greet the power of our mind, where we always tend to complete a fragment. We see a few columns and we recall a port, a gate. We see a diagonal view through thresholds and we meet it again. Why is that so interesting for us? Because we are curious of how can we belong to a place in a way which is not a quote, an iconic or figurative quote of the place, but it is an allusion to the places we know from here and there and somewhere elsewhere again. Are we standing still in a square? Are we moving in a street? Are we passing beside a column? Are we outdoor or indoor? Clearly indoor, but we recall other places. That's something which is a real phenomenon that happens. How can you orchestrate spaces in a way that they mean something for somebody else? Different maybe from your perception, but somehow assonant. Ercolano. Here you see that the salty sea has, and mostly the salty wind of the sea has eroded the stone, the tufa stone, and there is left the bastard mortar, much, much, much stronger than the tufa stone. A tale of walls. We may think of walls as the scene for all of our lives and of all the people before us, which are a crowd. And there is a combination of many voices and many silences. Walls define space. They are stable, solid. A wall is a wall. It also hosts and preludes to other spaces, maybe with a staircase. Walls also represent a culture, an identity. They have a certain degree of festivity, and may we call it ornament, but then what is ornament? Representing man in a truthful manner does not mean perhaps giving birth to our memory in theirs. We know so many brick walls. They all change for size of brick, moving from country to country, but also if we could travel in time from epoch to epoch, because of the availability of means and technical material means and technical means to produce and work materials. Sizes of the joint, mortar joint change, therefore we have different expressions, but everybody knows what is a brick wall. It's not only about the brick wall. Brick wall is the presence of a building. These are the Béguinage houses. And here in first place, the wall says, I am introvert. I am not looking the city. I give the shoulder to the city. Still, I, as a wall, belong to the city. We chose to support, confirm the attitude of the Béguinage houses, which was a way to protect the cultural integrity of the Béguinage as a sort of island, urban island, cultural island within the city. Therefore, we proposed a long wall, blind wall, with only 3 openings without glass, because we wanted it to absorb light, to be silent, opaque, though vibrant. Vibrant is very important. If it would have been without detail, its scale would have been overwhelming, non-consonant, following Ars Poetica of Horace, to the context where all lights are broken in minor grains of shadow, so that a significant blind wall is tuning the scale of the monument with the scale of man. And we opened the wall with a filigree of windows towards a garden, many windows, austere rhythm, which was neither the rhythm of the Béguinage houses, neither the rhythm of the existing Vleugel 58, which was an existing museum, Kunsthaus. Another one, still assonant. And this wall is a solid wall, but it has a door which moves. And the wall is clearly a paramento, a textile. In first place, a wall allows you to tune and phrase your cultural relation with a place, which may be of continuity or may be of dissonance, but it expresses your awareness of a cultural position. On the other side, a wall, making buildings or making rooms, is also an ornament, a textile. It was important to us to have a wall which would be different from the existing bricks from the context, which were, of course, with many variations in size and mixture of clay and baking temperatures. Ercolano. This photo I took in Ercolano is dear to me because it feels almost if a wind is blowing from behind this very light textile, and this sense of ornament may be found in Ghent, may be found in Cadoro in Venice, and it is a cultivated ambiguity of tectonics and decoration. Our wall is a solid wall. It is a built facade. It's load bearing. So one brick is 1 kilo, approximately 700 grams. But sometimes you have the perception that it may be painted, and it is puzzling, this diamond shape. It recalls opus reticulatum from Roman time. So there is an allusion to tectonic, and it is a load-bearing built brick wall, but it also is painted in various tones. This wall has a size which starts from the brick, which was tuned in size to find a common measure with the existing context. The closest building, Vleugel 58, it is 2 bricks of Vleugel 58 and 3 joints of mortar, more or less, because luckily life and reality are not sharp as CAD. But then we had to make variations on the theme so that we could achieve a living wall where you could forget its exceptionality some now and then. Here is the brick wall. You see, 3 bricks. 4 mortar joints, I was mistaken. It is 200 millimeter high, 130 width. And indeed, when we planned the competition, we presented making an exhibition, a printed textile, as we wished the city and the jury to have a direct, allusive experience of this textile wall. Textile then, as said, needs to be with, I really believe that. You need to develop all the details so that you can forget that you have been working on all the details. And in that way, you may achieve this sort of silent continuity that brings our surrounding as a kind of foreground background for our lives. This wall is not so important. I would say it's quite meaningless. It is simply a quiet background for the life of people. And in order to be so, it needs to be considered in all its part. Rooms. A tale of rooms. Rooms are mysterious. We all know what is a room, but do we really know what is a room? Is it small? Normally, yes. Otherwise, I would say it is a hall. Is it only one room, or does it need other rooms to be a room? Would it be possible that we need other rooms to have perception and knowledge of one room? Color itself is a degree of darkness. Hence, Kirk is perfectly right in calling it lumen opacatum. Here, Goethe is fighting Newton, and he is really wishing to speak of colors with other colors. So there is light together with shadow. Light is a brightened shadow, and shadow is a dimmed light, and so for colors. Often we experience places that may resemble mini school in relation to other places. Other times, we may be sitting on a bench overlooking a vast landscape. We live the immense. Is there a given scale for rooms, or isn't the perception of scale something that is alive and present in ourselves? Lumen opacatum. All spaces, places come to life, which are compass and squares. So we work with numbers and clear measures, but 1 meter is never simply 1 meter. It depends to what it relates. But there is something more with rooms. How do we remember other places? We may recall villas. We may recall palaces. But why and how? Rooms from culture of villas and palaces are about almost infinite, mesmerizing, walk around from room to another room, circling, valsing around, like a dance. But they also chain with the perception of outdoor rooms which belong to the room itself. And maybe in Palladio very often is this outer landscape completing the tiny room itself, mostly on the axis, but sometimes even in the corners. Or it may be a trompe-l'œil, so an artificium created inside that allows you to enhance this hypnotic circling from room to room. And we do need time to perceive spaces and get familiar with them or get puzzled. And in this being puzzled, there is always a interchanging presence of outdoor and indoor that may be hinted even by just learning a balustrade, the balustrade of Level 58 that we have been refraining. We are alike on a terrace. Is that afar from being in a room? Not really. Or being in a loggia. Or being in a lake. Rooms are also the space defined that allows us to rediscover the outside and therefore orient ourselves. We meet the Geneva Museum, which is a nearby, it was a gym factory, now it's a museum, only after walking long in the interior of the building. We only saw it at the entrance. It is no different from how you walk in a villa. Therefore, this promenade, from space to space, from room to room, better said, would like to invite you to question how can we remember other places without quoting a form, a figure, a geometry, neither a language. These rooms are therefore like characters. And one fascinating thing of rooms within a building is also that you may visit the same building and then go and have a coffee with a friend and you speak of completely two different buildings because you simply visited other places. Therefore, rooms first exist in our mind, but they exist in our mind because there are other rooms already existing. Rooms also speak of the city. There is a hidden, silent size of spaces within different contexts, and it's not relating merely to the length of wooden beams available in the 18th century, as we see that there is a shared size of span between Flögel 58, which is with the concrete slabs, and the width of the Berlage houses from the 18th century, which have indeed wooden beams holding then structural wooden planks. Why is that? There is embedded in places a culture of building, which is not merely the convention or costume of building. And that is something which is expressed in the presence and posture of buildings toward the streets, not necessarily translating in the outdoor, on the facade, that size. It's something more subtle, but there is a belonging. And here we just walk quickly as a glimpse through the plans of Flögel 58 and its extension, Flögel 20, it's called now, just to glimpse the sizes of rooms. But these sizes are also a kind of interlude of space and silence among people. So it is a little like alone together, like beloveds, now that we need to have our space on our own, but still be able to share. And an awareness of, or an interest, no, it's better, a curiosity in understanding the meaning of orchestrating rooms somehow mirrors a curiosity in understanding the space among men and women. It's not gender. A tale of thresholds. That's what I feel, an outside and inside, and me in the middle. Perhaps that is what I am. The thing that divides the world into two. On the one side, the outside. On the other, the inside, that can be thin as a foil. I am neither one side nor the other. I am in the middle. I am the partition. I have two surfaces and no thickness. Samuel Beckett in The Unnameable. Threshold is this ineffable space, place that allows perception, the experience of all. It begins with light. From thresholds, openings, light comes in a building and reveals the depth and value of the shadow. These are ground plan and first floor plan at competition time of Zurich extension. Simple rooms, complex natural light and shadow. We've been hanging on the wall of the constructor office the photographs we took, analog photographs of a modeling scale 1 to 10 that we will meet in the center of this series, so that while building the building, they would remember they would remember why thresholds were so important, why openings would be so important. Imagine that I am tiny, 1.60 meters, and I am high as this window. It looks a small domestic space while it's high. Thresholds were important because they were bringing, and here I'm quoting a beautiful expression of Mark Pimlott, the air of one room close to the air of another room. Why was that so important? Because light, natural light, reveals and denies thicknesses. Again, the mystery and wonder of human perception. This is a natural a skylight, like when we're sailing in cast in situ, load bearing, which hosts above a kind of organon of natural and artificial light. And light becomes, light makes even more slender the perception of this drone sailing as a silhouette, dark silhouette, contro luce. It's not different from the wish we had for the thresholds among all spaces, so that could be a fold of the wall coming closer to the detail of the frame of the window, so that we could come thin, more abstract, bringing places closer to each other. It is the first relation established with the outdoor familiar beings, purplish pigmented mortar outdoor and another purplish lilac wine outdoor space, but the thresholds are painted. It is a depicted relation. Thanks to natural lighting, not much we did. It needs sharpness as well, so that the artifice can be lived as real. And there is where we are interested in fabulation. Fabulation is the ability to make live images real, as real. It is a column. It is a bifora. It comes to lines. Lines are the minimal degree we could find to let spaces be lived one with the other, constantly reverberating light, therefore coming alive through light. We needed the thresholds to be the more abstract as possible to make the spaces more real as possible. I apologize for this unfocused photograph, are photos from the building site with my iPhone. At the same time, the artifice of the thresholds continues, and there you have surprises where the outdoor becomes an abstract painting as the thresholds themselves are, a surface of color or a surface of light that changes. It continuously changes from one minute to the other, also because in Belgium the wind moves fast as in your country, in Holland. Therefore, you come from darkness to blows of light. We needed an abstract threshold to reveal precisely this oniric, real artificium of spaces, of indoor and outdoor continuously change. But the difference between the present and the past is that the conscious present is an awareness of the past in a way and to an extent which the past awareness of itself cannot show. This is a wonderful fragment from Tradition and Individual Talent by Eliot, on which it's really worth to reflect upon, and it's probably for us the most relevant question through all our attempt in making buildings, which is how to belong to the length of time of culture and its polyhedral, confusing coexistence of different experiments. How can we belong to culture, past time, in a living, aware way today, which means how can we understand, sense, but not sentimentally, sense. So open-minded perception, the constants, so the built presences and acts that have survived because we invested with meaning, and rephrase them, reinterpret them through an understanding of the variables of present time, meaning the needs of our time, the possibilities and limits of our time. And that's why follows this series of drawings, which are first drawings for a project in China that will not follow up. It was a school when they found asbestos in this industry. Anyhow, what is interesting to share with you of these drawings is that I really believe that the spatial relations among places tell us stories of time past, and they can be reinterpreted beyond quotes or mimes. So independent, emancipated from any kind of nostalgia. But there it means that we have to be active. Therefore, Eliot speaks of this conscious present, a time where you become aware of what has survived around you and you take responsibility to respect it in your own terms. The merging of relations among things, more than things themselves, always poses new meanings. Aldo Rossi, and we are in 99. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
I also would like to thank my team, my dear team, Giacomo, Giulia, Young, that were very patient in these days with me, and also to thank Mark Pimlott for the wondrous exchange of thoughts. And again, Salomon and Ludo, because you challenged me enormously. And I don't know if it disappointed you, but you enriched me.
Well, thank you so much again for accepting the invitation, for your storytelling this evening, for telling 5 different perspectives on the same building, which I think is always interesting. And I'm sure that you could tell 15 other stories. So
I don't know. It was very difficult.
I'm sure. Well, I know. Well, we can talk later. I mean, I'm very much into pentagrams, so we can talk later about the meaning of 5. But I know that there are some questions from our students. I think Georgia raised her hand here, if I saw it correctly. Georgia, do you have a question?
Yes. Hello, Francesca.
Good evening,
Thank you
Georgia.
so much for the lecture. It was really, really inspiring. So what I really like in your work is the fact that you work in different scales, from the building to the object, but with this same scenographical approach that make these fragments work together harmoniously. So I am really curious to understand what role does the human body play when you compose in these different scales?
A significant one under many aspects. One is from gestures of life, which are not, it's not Neufert parameter. I'm talking about something else. So I don't know if it is clear because I'm also struggling with words, but how the space needed by the body for cultural gestures. Meaning, what does it mean to be sitting? What does it mean to be in a niche? How does it mean to walk? How do you walk? How is it that we can read Nietzsche and all live a walk? How is it that we can read Walser and live a walk? How is it that we can look, I don't know, I read Bachelor or read, I'm speaking about like novels or philosophers, all better people than me, because there is not the lonely parameter of how you lift your arm. There are dimensions that speak about a cultural experience and a way of being alive. Another part is also very important, like how much weight can a worker hold before he gets annoyed? How can he be comfortable? So how can you put at ease his neck, his arm? How can he enjoy the work? So I don't have a romanticization of the body as space should be an extension of the body, because I don't believe in that. But I do believe that through senses, we feed our mind. Therefore is where it becomes very complex. And I have basically a lot of questions like you, and very few, well, I think no answers, really. And working at multiple scale, I always draw with a 1-to-1 together with 200 or 20, because that helps me more to check or have an overview on the consequences of some decisions at various levels. So that brings to stage another part that I strongly believe in, which is the responsibilities we have as architects, where we need to, our role is to guide other people. Therefore, before guiding someone towards a dead end, would be better to check if you are going a totally wrong direction or creating problems that are not needed and are coming just because you didn't see it. And therefore, maybe I try to spare that effort to people, so to check it. Georgia, did I somehow meet your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the lecture, and to build up on this previous question.
Maybe you can wave your hand, Maria, just so Francesca can see. Okay, okay, good.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you for the lecture. So to build up on this previous question, so you were speaking about the rhythm and frames, body movement, and you mentioned Aristotle, and I was reminded of the term kinesthesia, this movement and feeling, and maybe these instant perceptions one has. And if we were to move in the scale of the city and the collective memory you were also talking about, maybe I would like to ask what tools can, if you could expand more on what tools can architecture use in order to contribute to the enhancement of the collective memory?
Wow, what a question. Georgia. Maria Christopoulou, you are Greek, so you are you have knowledge of Aris Constantinidis.
Yes, of course.
You have knowledge also of Puigjaner.
Yes, of course.
And I think you have a cultural ground to already find, I think, better suggestion than the one I feel having. I believe in observation. And I also believe that there is always a kind of specificity together with common understanding, as well as there is an historical time, a temporal, together with timeless, even if I'm not very fond of that word. So one thing is, how can we enrich our knowledge? Because it's like with music, the more sounds you have in your mind, the more you can hear. The more knowledge you have, more languages more mathematic language you know, the more you can understand physics. Also the non-comprehensible, like I'm trying to read for the 15th time 6 Easy Pieces by Feynman, and still I'm not understanding. I'm lacking languages. And so there is one thing, how can you enrich yourself so that you can see more? And see is not merely visual. Another part then is, what is your position? So what are you interested in? What would you like to, how do you interpret your observations? And that, I think, is the field of each individual, and thankfully there is space for diverse position. And last but not least, I believe that in our profession we have the responsibility to take very seriously the variables of present life. Otherwise we are like we are starting and producing something which is already dead. Like it already fails in having a chance that people can give meaning to it. And equally, if it is too egocentric, the same way, I think if it's too simplistic, I think in the same way, hardly people can give meaning to it. People giving meaning to places means that they will survive. And that's what at least I am interested. But again, it's my point of view. Yeah. You cannot make a opus articulatum today, to be clear, no? It would be stupid from my point of view. But the realm of allusions is very powerful, because every time you go to have a chat with someone, you speak mostly through allusions. That's just a fact. So we can engage in seeing how we can use not only technical or management economical tools of the present processes of building, but we can listen to how is life in the time we're living. And there was me saying, let a potato be a potato, let a rose be a rose, only then they philosophically exist. I think it's a little bit what you're searching for, seems.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if I misunderstood you or if...
No. Thank you very much. Is that...
You all look like very wise people. Very wise faces.
It's the filter.
It's the Berlage filter. The Jacqueline, did you have a question?
Yeah, so you talk a lot about the kind of the past buildings and the current buildings, and I was kind of curious on your kind of philosophies on the ruin and kind of the modern ruin, and how as an architect you view your buildings and your materials that you are selecting new as kind of becoming the ruin, 100 years from now, or how these materials are degrading over time and becoming the wall that you show. If you,
I have to first react with some humor, because this building ended in 2019, and then there were some political events, so it was postponed till 2020 January. Then began the COVID. So at a point there were like 3 openings cancelled. So at a point I said, maybe very self-ironic on this, but
sorry, we lost you just at the moment the internet connection got slow. Just as you said, you mentioned we were talking about the 3 canceled openings. We missed the important sentence.
Yeah, well, I said that I said that I was going to paint the building as a ruin, and it would be the building that was finished and never opened, just swapped from being finished to a ruin, and that's it. So full of plans, I even made sketches about it. So it really was calling, because it's you could not know, but that really something happened. And I think that, well, the building was really thought to be with an identity in case of blackout, so gone electricity. And very important to me is the sense of aging for a very almost banal sense of building is an adventure, should not be wasted. It's a lot of money involved. So I have a sense of respect for the investment. They could have been shells or sesterzi Today it's euro, but anyhow, it's an investment of a community, and even if it is of individual being, I like things lasting. Also for my clothes, I like they last. I have clothes from when I was almost 20, no? So because I'm reacting a little bit in this way because I don't like the romanticization of the patina. That things are nice when they get older. And I don't think that is the core of the beginning of a proposal for spaces, at least not for me. But I'm very interested in aging, and I'm interested in building that doesn't need almost technology to be interesting. But in that sense, for example, Saint Pompidou, for me, is also like that. Doesn't need any technology. It's a kind of crazy cathedral in the middle of Paris, and it has sizes very much tuning with the surrounding building. So it's not about a language or a figure or promoting a utopia of technology, what I was saying before. It's more of literally a physical cultural presence and the tuning of spaces. So myself, I adore ruins and I love to go to archaeological sites and to museums. So that's personal. Therefore, maybe I have layered polyhedral places. And indeed, I normally prefer buildings which are not exhausted in one glimpse, because then they bore me. Even Pantheon, it is one space, but you can go there forever. But there is a plurality. I think I'm interested in that. And that I may relate to ruin. I hope I did not disappoint you, Jacqueline.
No, thank you.
Can I ask a question if it's time?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. Thank you for lecture. You mentioned scenography in terms of slide and maybe in terms of movement of view. I want to ask like how you test how it will be in reality through models or just by imagination, this scenography.
First thing I do is drawing the building as it was finished, even if I don't know the plan. Like to have the most difficult moment for me is to understand what I think is right for a place and a chance of program. And that happens through drawing. Then many models are made, and these models are most of time made either to share a narrative with clients or with a city. So they are a tool to get up with agreement on something you're going to work together for. On the other side, many models one-to-one. For example, I showed a twin window this evening. The glass is only 23 centimeters, very narrow. When I drew it, I thought, oof, I made a mistake. Then I made very quickly a paper model after we made a proper model one-to-one to show the client how it was. So they're made both ways to check, but the adjustment, I have to say, are minor with models. It's very weird. Now we have one that was very useful for a new project, and there indeed we use the model to check, verify the combination. So in a more scenographical sense that you were mentioning, to adjust the site. But till now, mostly it was about decisions made through drawing and model for a narrative or to check the one-to-one.
I would like to ask you.
Maybe also that we have a small practice, so I select very highly what we do, so we don't try 1,000 things. Thinking first and then a few things, so we spare time and effort because we are few.
Thank you.
I hope was. Sorry, I interrupted you, Anna. My apologies.
Sorry, no, sorry, for interrupting you. Well, first, thank you for the incredible lecture. I would like to ask you about the collaboration with, if you collaborate normally with photographers, or if all the images, I assume that yes, and how do you collaborate with them to like somehow communicate them all these intrinsic meanings behind your work? And then what is the role of these images as a design tool for future projects?
I'm very fond of photography, very. And there was a former student of mine that is a wondrous photographer, John Balthasar von Albertini. And many photographs of the completed building are by him. Also the ones of the Berlage context. And there, what I did was to send him the photos I took with the iPhone with my eyes, so he could understand the walk. And then I went with him walking in spaces. But then real photographers can capture the light. That for me is photography. One aspect, like the real photographer. Real photographers can capture the light. I'm not able to do that. And the other is that there is a balance of all the stories out of the photograph that are present in the photograph, even if they're out of the frame. And that's something that, so not specific, let's say, not like for the photos maybe you've seen, but it's something I highly respect of John von Albertini and other photographers, this ability to have kind of rigor and kindness together. That's very interesting to me. So that was a collaboration. I think it's not matching your question because I think you had other expectations maybe. Then there is another photographer, but I'm not sure in this photograph there was none. But she's also very, very good. Giulia Namani, my collaborator. She's incredibly sensitive and very sharp. It's all about, yeah, so what has to, I'm thinking how to, because I'm not able, I don't use photography to design, like a little bit summed up. I don't do that. But I look a lot and I am extremely sensitive to photographs. So obviously I learn a lot from photographs. So I owe them and many other photographers. And it's about a way of seeing. So question is, how can you have a whole with only a part? How can you have plurality with calmness? I don't know. I find very difficult to
Yes, perfect.
react. Very difficult.
Is there one last question?
I had a question.
Nishi?
Yes, and thank you for the very beautiful presentation. It was amazing to see the minute details to the whole space. And so you were talking about memories and this collective memory we have, or the remembrance, or nostalgia, if I may say that. But so my question was related to the context where your designs are. And it's more about how in your design process, you use the context as an index of memory, or if the site becomes a place from where you borrow maybe the materials or the textures or even the patterns maybe. So how does the site...
It's very good you make this question, because it offers me the chance to clarify that it is not an index. And it's not borrowing data, it's completely different. And that, I think, is precisely what is most important to me. It's to interpret, not to quote.
Yeah, but not maybe literally, but because you mentioned that there's a coexistence of this within and what was the without and the within, so the city and the private. So how do they relate? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm being clear, but if there is this not a very literal borrowing of elements, but something that has the memory of a city, which is...
Yes, and that is, yeah, precisely. And that is basically my main interest in the practice. That's really the core of everything. That's why I wake up curious of starting the day, because there's something that interesting to follow. It's like, it's really, and my question is, how can you build a dialogue which is the kind of fair independence of the interlocutors? How can you collect phrases that have survived with meaning and speak your own phrase? There was in 1956 a wonderful 59, I may be mistaken, fabulous number when was director Rogers, Casabella Continuità, where there was the acts of a meeting of a kind of parallel order of architects in Milano. It was held by Albini at the time, and Albini was exactly speaking about I'm going to search for it, so I put it precisely. 1 second. I would be terrible to waste his words. 1 secondo. 1955, not 60, it was 206, the number, and 55, says, perfecting the constants and by thoroughly investigating the possibilities of the variables. I say it again, by perfecting the constants and by thoroughly investigating the possibilities of the variables. You see, nothing about language. It's not that we have a ground where there are the forms of the capitelli that for centuries were translated into the botteghe, no? Okay, it's much vaster than that, but the orders in architecture have been quite long lasting shared language, but it's also cultural storytelling and figuration. It's very complex. I don't want to enter that field, no? Then a lot of questions in the air, and I think I feel very interested in this kind of third way, like Christa Wolf, the German writer, was saying, Cassandra, between killing and dying, there is a third way, which may be living. No, and in that sense, it is how can we respect and value what many people have made survive to many centuries, which is what you say, this borrowing. But I think borrowing is not a good word. I think I'm also struggling how to find words. But being authentic, not authentic that it means that genuine, which means also that includes the artificium. No, doesn't mean that if you make a stone building, it has to be stone a certain way. I don't believe in fanatism of any kind or purism. But yeah, it's appassionating, your quest. I share it completely. And I don't have answers. I have experiments, dear Nishi.
I think
that Albini really phrased a very interesting question. It's very precise, very open at the same time.
I think
it challenges you not to build up your voice.
Thank you very much, Francesca. On that note, we'd love to give you a round of applause. Thank you for a fantastic contribution to this semester's theories. Thank you.
To you.